We are live. Welcome to the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. If you haven't watched the show before, we preview an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be talking about the interim bantamweight title fight between Petr Yan and Corey Sandhagen. Before we get into that, make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. That's where we're going to be referencing all during the show. I've already made my picks today. I told you I'm getting better at that. And also make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on this video. Before we dig into this, we got to announce a partnership that has taken place. I'll let my man JHK take the reins on this one and tell everyone what's going on.
So a lot of you guys probably seen that the YouTube channel has been changed to the All-Star. And what's happening right now is this podcast is going to be presented in conjunction with the All-Star, which recently entered into a strategic partnership with Fanatic Fantasy MMA. So a lot of the content is going to be all through the All-Star. All-Star is going to be the next big thing. So you guys stick around and continue watching and go check out the website, download the app, and you could get everything that you need for sports, and especially MMA, combat sports. Let's get it on, man.
There you go. And like John said, be part of the next big thing. You don't want to be one of those kids who's late to the party. You want to be on this thing early on. So definitely excited about that. And just, again, helping our show out and just, really making things a lot more bigger than they already are. So we're really excited about that. Let's get into this fight. Corey Sandhagen, Petr Yan. I mentioned it here. Great replacement fight. We always start with how we got here first. And I actually got a little bit of insight because I did have a chance to speak to Corey Sandhagen earlier today. So got a lot of sort of tidbits I'll be mentioning throughout the show. But we got here because Aljamain Sterling got hurt. Now, I'm not going to debate the merits of how he got hurt and all these other things. And I know there's going to be a lot of sort of backlash on this because of who we're talking about here with Aljamain Sterling, but we're here because a couple of reasons. Number one, Corey Sandhagen, yes, he did lose his last fight to TJ Dillashaw, but it was a close fight. We'll dig into that a little bit later, but Corey Sandhagen took advantage of good timing, good opportunity, and a good overall record in MMA and the UFC, and I think that's why he's got here. Petr Yan was always here. He didn't go anywhere. The opponent went somewhere, Aljamain Sterling. That's not happening. So the reason we're here is because Corey Sandhagen was the right person for the job. And instead, what we have is, with Sandhagen taking this fight, we now have Jose Aldo and Rob Font fighting. I think this makes a lot of sense. Rob Font, I think, was the only other guy you could have possibly put in this spot here. He's also on a similar winning streak. Well, he is on a 2-fight win streak. Sandhagen technically on a loss. TJ Dillashaw was injured. Jose Aldo fought Petr Yan last year. I know a lot of people were like, I want to see Aldo get this shot. He already had it last year. It was in July. I forgot how close that fight was. So I don't think people are clamoring to see that rematch right away. So to me, it was between Sandhagen and Font with Dillashaw injured. I don't have an issue with Corey Sandhagen getting this over Rob Font. Just your thoughts on us coming to this fight and getting this as opposed to, say, Rob Font as an alternative.
Well, the first thing is people just dumping on Aljamain Sterling. It's not his decision. He wasn't medically cleared. The doctors didn't allow him to enter this fight. That's what happened. And a lot of people are like, oh, why did he wait until after he won the title or he got the title or after the title fight? Because before you get the title fight, you're trying to take every advantage that comes, every opportunity that comes to you. And that's what happens. You start to delay surgeries, and that's what these fighters do a lot of the times. And then once you get the belt and you're secure, then of course you're going to go get the surgery. Why not get the surgery at that time? Because why? The division waits on you at that moment. It's not reversed, right? Before, that was the situation for Aljamain, and that's why he probably didn't get the surgery. This is just my speculation. I thought he was smart to do that because he has the belt now. If he didn't have the belt now, then he wouldn't be smart. But this fight being put together, I don't see any problem with it. You know what I mean? Aljamain can't make the fight. They need another title fight on that event. And Corey Sandhagen, he's a killer. He's gonna step in because why? He's gonna take advantage of the opportunity, just like how Aljamain has done before. Now with Corey, it's kind of weird because he's coming off a loss, and Petr Yan is coming off a loss too. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are going to focus on. And why did they put this fight together? Petr Yan, I feel like he is on one side and he's guaranteed a shot at the title. It could have been anybody, but I like Corey Sandhagen. I think he deserves it. And even though he's coming off the loss, it doesn't matter. The UFC don't care. These are the best guys in the world. If they're coming off a loss, they're coming off a loss because they lost to one of the other best guys in the world. So let's fight.
Yeah, and I think on any given night, I think this is the key thing people need to focus on as far as about this fight being made. On any given night, I truly believe this. Corey Sandhagen, Petr Yan, TJ Dillashaw, Jose Aldo, Rob Font, I think can all beat each other. I really feel that way. It's that close when it comes to these
What about
matchups.
Aljo? Why?
And Aljamain Sterling, I'm talking like fighters that were available to take this fight, right? So what I'm getting at here is that to me, they're all sort of at that same skill level. And yes, I know Aljamain Sterling did beat Sandhagen, but what I'm getting at is that they're everyone's sort of top notch. So to me, it's not like a case of where, like, if Sean O'Malley had got the shot, for example, in which I don't know why that question was asked in that interview to that other interviewer asked that question, not going to mention who that is, but saying that, was Sandhagen worried about him getting the shot? He was never going to get the shot. He didn't have a ranked opponent. To me, O'Malley just did that to get his name out there. If that had happened, let's say for some crazy reason that happened, then people have reason to be upset. But to me, I don't think you can go wrong with Sandhagen being in this spot, just the same way you couldn't have gone wrong with Rob Font. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. We're going to get a high level fight. And, the one thing I will mention quickly about this Aljo situation is they rushed him back. Absolutely. He had neck surgery and he's coming back in October. Really? He just won the title. I think it was the UFC kind of forcing their hand and certainly being like, okay, I don't want to look like I'm wimping out, because that's what people are already saying. And now he doesn't take it and people are still saying the same thing. So he can't win. So that's where we're at right now as far as the fight being made with Sandhagen and Petr Yan. Let's dig into Corey Sandhagen right now. Even though I guess technically we should have started with Yan, but let's look with Sandhagen first. 29 years old, 5'11" with a 70-inch reach. So he's going to be bigger, as he usually is with most of his opponents in the bantamweight division. Remember, Corey Sandhagen was a former featherweight fighter, moving down to bantamweight, so he's a bit big for the weight class. Petr Yan, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. Petr Yan's 28. Isn't that weird? I think of Corey Sandhagen being younger than Yan, but it's Yan who's younger, which is interesting. So I don't know, maybe just kind of how I'm sort of feeling about the whole thing. Sandhagen with a 14-3 record did lose to TJ Dillashaw in his last fight, but if you head over to our friends over at MMA Decisions and you look at the media scorecards, and I know that's not the be-all and end-all, 17 media members scored the fight for Corey Sandhagen, just 6 scoring it for TJ Dillashaw. So take that for what you're worth. But it was a close fight. Like, Dillashaw won, I thought Sandhagen won, but it was razor close there. But that's not typical of Corey Sandhagen's last couple of fights. It's been finishes. The 28-second finish over Frankie Edgar, the minute and 3-second finish over Marlon Rice in the second round in the fight before that. So overall, Sandhagen's really come into another gear since losing to Aljamain Sterling back in 2020, which actually was last June. Even though technically Sandhagen is 2-2 in his last 4, he's still been competing against the best in the division. Prior to that, he was going the distance. Remember, he had that split decision win over John Lineker, had the decision win over Rafael Sunsao. Didn't really tell us too much about Sandhagen at that point because he was winning those fights, but he wasn't winning in a way where you're like, wow, this could really sort of break things up a little bit. But it wasn't until the Moraes fight, which I remember going into that fight thinking Moraes is probably going to knock this guy out, and that didn't happen. The opposite happened here. So Corey Sandhagen has really leveled up. I mentioned it there. Sandhagen, a former featherweight. He actually made his UFC debut in January of 2018 as a featherweight, beat Austin Arnett in his debut. And he decided to move down the fight after that against Yuri Alcantara in a fight that I think sort of woke people up because he got a second round finish in that one. But Sandhagen comes to us from a great camp at Elevation Fight Team. He's getting to work with all types of different fighters, including Justin Gaethje. I know for this particular camp, he's not, because Gaethje's obviously preparing for Michael Chandler. But he did mention a little bit of tidbit, which I put on Twitter earlier today, is that Corey Sandhagen is going to be bringing in not only Rafael Stotts, who's a bantamweight standout in Bellator, but also the Bellator bantamweight champion Sergio Pettis. So going to have some extra bodies in the gym. I think that's a great move for Corey Sandhagen heading into this fight, and it's certainly going to make the matchup very interesting. So John, just your thoughts on Corey Sandhagen as a fighter and what he's accomplished so far in his relatively short UFC career.
Yeah, people don't realize that, right? He doesn't have that many fights. Well, Petr Yan doesn't have that many fights either, and he was the champion. Corey Sandhagen, what can you say? He's one of those guys that you would, when he first entered the UFC, a blue chip prospect, right? A guy that has a lot of talent, physical attributes, and still developing. And through his first 5 fights in the UFC, I felt like he showed, a lot of improvements every fight. And then when he hit the top echelons, which is Aljamain Sterling, that's when he took a loss, right? He took the L and he got submitted in the first round. And I think that loss improved him more than anything that he did in those first 5 fights, right? I think the mental side kicked in after that. And that's why you saw the back-to-back knockouts of Frankie Edgar, Marlon Moraes. And then when you go into the TJ Dillashaw fight, if you dissect it, right? What if TJ Dillashaw, there's a lot of what ifs and everything, but what if TJ Dillashaw didn't hurt his knee in that first round? You know what I mean? Would TJ Dillashaw went into the second round and dominated and finished Corey Sandhagen, would because if you think about it, without that knee, Dillashaw can't do what he does, and he still gutted out the win against Sandhagen, right? He used his wrestling, and I feel like because he wasn't able to move, that's why he got hit so much with those power shots, and he even got knocked down, I think, in the second round, and maybe he got knocked down in another round, I forget. But yeah, to me, that fight was more impressive from TJ Dillashaw's side than Corey Sandhagen. I felt Sandhagen, he kind of fell in love with the finish. And in that fight, he just was chasing the finish too much. Even though he outlanded Dillashaw 128 strikes to 110, a lot of people think that Dillashaw won that fight with volume, but he didn't. He just won that fight by mixing it up and knowing what the judges wanted and making adjustments. I think Corey didn't really make too many adjustments throughout that fight, but it was a great fight. If you go back and watch it again, it's worth watching. It's fun. There's a lot of damage. Dillashaw coming back from steroid, suspension and all of that good stuff. But yeah, to me, Corey Sandhagen, he is still moving up in his career. And I think that is something that you guys got to look at in improving in his skill set. He's not really a knockout artist with his hands, which I feel like is interesting, but he can knee the hell out your face and kick your head into the solar system. And I feel like that's going to be something that we got to look at when we dissect, and make our predictions.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. One other thing I was going to mention about Corey Sandhagen is just the fact that he's a guy as well that I think really. He talked about this on the Joe Rogan podcast. By the way, if you haven't seen that episode where he really goes into detail about the lost Aljamain Sterling, he just, like you said, talks about the mental side of things, of how he had to sort of change his mindset with certain things. So I highly recommend checking that out, getting an idea of what Corey Sandhagen's sort of been doing mentally since that lost Aljamain Sterling. We've seen that obviously in his fights with him looking very impressive. All right, let's talk about No Mercy. Petr Yan, 28 years old. Like I mentioned, went through his, sort of his stats and stuff there. But let's get into his body of work in the UFC. Even prior to him coming over to the UFC, there was a lot of hype with him coming to us from ACB. Just had the one loss, a split decision to Magomed Magomedov, who we know is that's the guy in Bellator right now, the Tiger, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, same guy. Made his UFC debut back in 2018, June of 2018, and got a first-round finish over Ishihara, if you remember, who was kind of a guy that UFC was pushing, if you remember, for a little bit, for like 5 minutes it seemed, and then that didn't end up happening. Went on to get a couple nice wins after that. There was the Jimmy Rivera fight, which I think was a fight where people are kind of like, okay, maybe this guy isn't as good as we thought, because he won the fight, but he didn't like come away cleanly in that one. If I remember correctly, Rivera actually either dropped him or hurt him pretty good at some point in the fight, and Yan was able to come back and win the fight, but that was one where you're kind of like, whatever. He beat Uriah Faber, which I think a lot of people sort of expected to happen. To me, it wasn't until the Jose Aldo fight that really showed how talented he is, because you look at what Aldo's done since then. You look at Aldo overall, he's only lost to some of the best in the world. And yes, it was a late finish in that fight, but that was a fight, I think, too, where the referee could have stepped in a little bit earlier here. Aldo was taking a lot of damage, and this sort of is a theme with Yan, where it's like there's a certain point where the tide will turn, kind of like in the Aljamain Sterling fight, where you could just see him taking over. And he did that against Aldo. And to finish Aldo, which is such a feat. I mean, you think of Volkanovski, he wasn't able to finish him. You think of all the fighters that Aldo's fought and not, and he hasn't been finished. It's pretty impressive that Yan was able to do that at a certain point. So that's a big win for him. And then the Sterling fight, I mean, let's call it what it was. Yan was turning the tide. He made a mistake. The fight's a DQ. I've said this from I don't know how many times, but the title should have just been vacant. It was Yan who made the mistake. He shouldn't have been awarded the title. You shouldn't give the title to the guy who, didn't exactly win the fight. It was Jan's mistake that cost the fight to end the way it did. But I think most people, and I mean, would agree with this outside of maybe some Aljamain Sterling fans, felt like that fight was turning, where Yan was, I think early on it was pretty even. And then Yan sort of took over in that fight and looked like he was on his way to either getting a late finish or a decision in that fight. But that was a really big win for him as well. So I think Yan is as advertised. I'm curious to see where he's training for this camp. I don't believe he's at American Top Team, which is where he was for the last camp. I think he's back in Russia, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, I talked to Arman Saryukin. I know he's not at ATT right now, so it looks like, I'm assuming the majority of the camp will be out there. I'm hoping to get an interview with him. I know you are too, John. We're working on it behind the scenes. I had someone ask me about that today, but Petr Yan is about as well-rounded as it gets in that division. I don't think he excels in one particular area, but he's just good everywhere. So it's like, no matter where the fight goes, you know that he's going to be ready to go. So Petr Yan, very much established. Some people feel like he's the uncrowned champion, but again, he made a mistake. I think that's something we got to realize here. Yan's the one who made the mistake. And, at the end of the day, the reason he doesn't have the title is because of something he did. It's not anything else. So, excited for this fight. But, Petr Yan, that's my thoughts on him. Your thoughts on Petr Yan and what he brings to this fight?
Yeah, with Jan, he has 2 blemishes, but those 2 blemishes on his record, the first one against Magomedov or whatever, there's a lot of, if you go in deep into that story, there's a lot of mishandling and fuckery involved in that decision. That's why they did the rematch and Petr Yan won the title again. And then of course the title fight versus Aljamain Sterling. But Petr Yan has always been a guy that has been on the tongue of a lot of people that analyze fights and follow the sport worldwide. Like James said earlier, he was the ACB champion, and he came in with a lot of hype, and there was a lot of controversy at the start. Remember, a lot of people accusing him of certain things, of certain substances using. That's why he doesn't come to the UFC. But then when he finally made his trip and got signed, and that was a long process from what I heard, he's hit the ground running, man. He started smashing people, and that's what Petr Yan is. He's a berserker, but he's a unique berserker because usually berserkers come out the gate just throwing hard and moving forward. He's a slow starter, which is kind of a weird thing for his style, but man, it works for him. Because why? He plots forward and he throws bombs, and he's calculated with these bombs too at the same time. But then he puts himself in the fire, and that's why he gets into danger sometimes, and he gets dropped. And a lot of people feel like, in the Jimmy Rivera fight, he was in danger, and I feel like if he gets dropped, he's not like getting dropped as in like he's like staggered and like stanky leg drop. He just kind of drops and he pops back up. If you've seen him in his fights, that's what he does, right? He has a hell of a chin, and what can you say, man? The Jose Aldo fight, like you said earlier, was a perfect example of what Petr Yan can do at the top of his game. And I think that we haven't even seen the best of Petr Yan, just like we haven't seen the best of Corey Sandhagen. And I think that we're going to see a few fights between these two fellas in the future.
I think so too. Let's get to the odds. Let's get to our picks here, as we usually do towards the end of the breakdown. You see Petr Yan minus 195, Corey Sandhagen plus 175. I'm actually surprised. I've seen some other books as well that have Yan as a bigger favorite here. I agree with the odds here. I think Petr Yan has proven more in the octagon so far. I think he's, like I said, getting the finish over Aldo, extremely impressive. The problem with Sandhagen, I think, too, is he's looked amazing, but unfortunately, those wins have not aged very well. You know what I mean? Like Marlon Moraes, I mean, he looks like he's on his way out. He nearly beat Merab Dvalishvili. I think he'll get another fight, but that's not a great win to look back on. The Frankie Edgar win, it's great, but Frankie's been finished before. I know Korean Zombie finished him. Ortega finished him. I mean, I know certain bantamweights like Pedro Munoz, for example, weren't able to do that. But I don't know. Like, to me, there's still a bit of a verdict out there on how good is Sandhagen. And this is going to be like a true test, because the one fight we did see him fight that was like, well, I shouldn't say that. He's had 2 fights where he's had to step up. Dillashaw, which he lost, I know, close fight like we talked about earlier, and Sterling, which he got finished, let's be honest, he got kind of embarrassed in that fight. I mean, that was just a quick finish, quick loss. And I think even going in, I can't remember who I picked, but I remember it being like, thinking like, oh, this is going to be a close fight. And it certainly didn't look like that on paper. So that's the problem with Corey Sandhagen I have in this fight. But saying that, that's another part of him that makes this fight interesting, is Corey that good, or is it the fact that he's doing it against guys that just so happen to, not do well against a guy like this? Like, we can say this for sure. In my opinion, Petr Yan has never fought anyone like Corey Sandhagen before. Petr Yan has not. I think the longest, sort of leanest guy he's fought is probably Aldo, another former featherweight. But outside of that, like, is he going to be able to deal with some of the things that Sandhagen brings to the table? That's what makes this interesting. That's why the odds are a little bit close. But I think if we're looking at their overall careers at bantamweight, I think Jan's been, and I know I talked earlier about him sort of having to prove himself in the Aldo fight and even in the Sterling fight. I think what we've seen of Yan so far, to me, overall is more impressive than what Sandhagen's done, because he's fought the competition. I think that's a little bit better. I know you could sort of dissect every opponent and kind of look either way, but I think Jan's done a little bit more. And I think, okay, let's put it this way. This is why I'm picking Petr Yan in this fight. To me, Yan is like the safe pick here. I think with Sandhagen, if you're picking with him, even the biggest Corey Sandhagen fan, it is a bit of a wild card in the sense of, like, Sandhagen, whether he won his last fight or not, he still lost. He lost to Sterling. Like Yan has not had a fight like Sandhagen did against Sterling. and there's no evidence of Jan. Like, you look at his losses, the last one, like I said, it was his own self-inflicted mistake. The loss against Magomedov was a fight that it was a split decision loss. So really, he hasn't like had that fight where he's like looked bad or whatever, but Sandhagen has. So that's, to me, that's when you have a fight that's this close, you got to start looking at stuff like that. And to me, Jan is like the safe, true pick in this fight. And I just think he's very well-rounded. And not just that, but Jan's got that 5-round experience. He's got the fact, he got a late finish on Aldo. So that even if the fight gets into deep waters, he's able to put it into another gear and potentially get a finish. Sandhagen wasn't able to do that against Dillashaw. And you mentioned the busted knee, even more reason to say, hey, if Dillashaw was healthy, how would he have done in the 5-round fight? So I'm going to take Petr Yan. Can Corey Sandhagen win this fight? Absolutely. Again, he's this wild card in this matchup in terms of his skill set. And like I said, he does things that you don't see other fighters do with the flying knees and some of the other stuff that he's sort of brought to the arsenal. So I'm picking Yan, but I'm cautiously picking him here. I don't think it's a slam dunk pick. I mean, there's other breakdowns we've done where I've been a lot more confident about the fighter getting it done, but I got to pick Petr Yan. JHK, I have to. I think he is the guy here that is, to me, is more proven, and I think he's going to show that, and I think he's going to, and especially with what happened in the last fight, he's really wants to right that wrong. So I'm picking Petr Yan to win the decision. I don't think he'll finish Corey. I think Corey can be finished, but I think more likely than not, it's going to be one of those back and forth, all out great fights. I think it's going to play out similarly to the Lineker fight. I really feel that way. I think that, Jan's going to get some shots in, not going to finish Sandhagen, but he'll go out there and get it done. But I'm taking Petr Yan by decision. Who are you picking?
When I look at this fight, it kind of reminds me of the Volkanovski Ortega fight, and Corey Sandhagen, he has that X factor. Like, he can go in there and throw those flying knees, spinning attacks, spinning elbows, spinning back fists, and those all strikes that can knock you out, right? And also on top of that, Corey can get you on the ground and submit you. But the problem is, and this was exposed in the TJ Dillashaw fight, that Corey, his wrestling is not up to par as maybe some of the other guys in the division. And when you see Petr Yan's wrestling, his wrestling is very unique because he mixes in some of those Thai clinch trips. He did that to Aljamain a few times. He's done that before in other fights. Corey, one thing good about Corey, he's a fast starter. And I think that's what he needs to do when he goes in there against Petr Yan, is start fast and just go for it, man, from the start. Because if you let him go into that 3rd, 4th round, Petr Yan's a different animal at that time. Like, he's one of those rare human beings that just gets better as the fight goes. As you punch him more in the face, as you hurt him more, he gets more dangerous. And Corey Sandhagen needs to go in there and combat that, which is just to go in there and throw those flying knees and go for those one-shot big kills. And then if it doesn't happen, make the adjustments later in the fight. But I think that Petr Yan's just too good, man. I think he's just too good. And he's going to go in there and do the same exact thing. It's like, what he's going to do. Now, can you stop it? That's the only question. And that's what Petr Yan is doing. He just gets better at what he does. He doesn't add things really. He just gets better at what he does. He's like a master chef, right? At whatever with Korean food, whatever it is that his style is. You know what I mean? Like, he just perfects it. And I love watching that. This bantamweight division, dude, is insane.
So stacked.
So stacked, because you still got TJ Dillashaw waiting in the wings for the title fight too. And I can't wait to see those fights. TJ Dillashaw versus Petr Yan. But anyways, I'm taking Petr Yan in this fight. I think Petr Yan can go in there and he's going to just do what he does. He's either going to go and start slow. He's going to go and start slow and just build up and then win a decision, or he's going to start slow and build up and finish the fight in the 4th or 5th round. I feel like that's what's going to happen. It's going to be either a TKO finish or a decision win for Petr Yan. Corey has that Brian Ortega effect where he can go in there and he finds an opening. It can be very dangerous for Petr Yan. And I hope we have those moments in this fight, just like that 3rd round versus in Volkanovski Ortega. I hope we have those moments, because I think that would be beneficial for both fighters, win or lose. But at the end of the day, I think Petr Yan is just at another level. I think Petr Yan is the best bantamweight in the world. And I feel like a lot of the fighters believe that too.
Well said. All right, we're going to get to questions. Before we get to questions, a couple quick housekeeping things before we get to this, and I know you've been waiting patiently. First things first, make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. We're going to be referencing our picks a little bit later here. We're going to have our underdog picks at the end of the show as well. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Try and keep it to the bantamweight division or even this fight if you can with the questions. It doesn't really matter. There's a lot going on anyways, but we always like to keep it going. And we both picked Jan here. We'd love to hear any Corey Sandhagen pickers in the chat, and let's hear why and how you think he can win. We always want to spark a bit of a debate here as well. Also, a bit of breaking news. I should mention, not too notable, but because I know you just interviewed her, Sam Hughes out of her fight this Saturday with Lupi Godinez. We have a replacement here. I'm just going to read it. I'm not familiar with the replacement, but it's going to be taking on Silviana Gomez, who I believe is from Combate, going to be stepping in and fighting. Not sure why Sam Hughes is out of her fight. So that's kind of a bummer because I know you get to interview her.
Whoa, that's weird, right?
Yeah.
She was just sharing all her interviews and stuff too, like less than 24
hours
hours
probably
ago.
COVID, if I had to guess. I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably her corner or something like that. But it sucks for her, man. Especially when you go through a long camp and invest all that money, and then all of a sudden, COVID just stops it all. I could see why people are really angry about this pandemic going on, and understandably, it sucks, man. But I think it's just what we have to prepare for, right? I wonder if you get reimbursed for anything. I doubt it, right?
UFC. We'll see what happens. By the way, if you wanted to watch that Corey Sandhagen interview I referenced earlier, I just retweeted it on my Twitter account at Lynch on Sports. Make sure you check that out. I know there was someone else who did an interview with him yesterday. Watch mine though. Come on, let's be honest here. Getting something a little bit extra. I made Corey laugh today. You know why? Because I asked him, what was more meaningful to you, getting the interim title shot or when your girlfriend said yes when you proposed to her? And I got him to laugh at that. So that's a little extra stuff you get in my interviews as opposed to other people. All right, let's get to the questions here. Thanks for being patient. Antoine, what's up, man? He says, hey, John and James, sorry I missed the last couple breakdowns. Well, don't worry. We've been, I think 1 week I was off and then we switched the time. So it's all good. Since we're talking bantamweights, how do you guys see Font and Aldo going since the winner of that might get a title shot? Well, that's a fight we're going to be previewing here, I'm sure in the coming weeks. Early pick, just going to keep this simple and we'll dig in deeper when we get into it. I think Aldo wins. I'll explain why on the show in a few weeks, dig into it a little bit deeper, but I like Aldo in that fight. Do you have an early pick on that one or would you rather keep it as a teaser?
I'm going to go with Font, man.
Ooh, there we go. So we'll got lots to talk about. We'll do that one soon. I'm actually talking to Rob. I'm supposed to be talking to Rob later this week. So see what he has to say about that. If he's upset with me. Antoine says Aljo said that Jan will have a harder time dealing with someone as dynamic as Corey since Jan doesn't move as much. Do you guys agree, or is Aljo being biased since he has a win over Corey? Well, Aljo also picked Corey to beat Petr Yan, but again, that could be biased as well. Sort of making him look a little bit better. Yeah, we sort of talked about it there. I think, like I said, I don't think Jan's fought someone like Sandhagen before, so yeah, it could be interesting. And John mentioning Jan's a bit of a slow starter, it definitely makes the matchup a little bit more interesting as opposed to, say, I don't know, if someone else fought him. So yeah, I think Aljo has a point there. I don't think he's just being biased.
Yeah, I think when Aljo speaks, it's half like jokingly and half like real, but then sometimes he says some weird things. But anyways, yeah, I think, there's always that dynamic factor of Corey Sandhagen, right? It's just there. If you watch the sport, if you watch Corey, then you know that that's what he brings. It's just that, can he time it right? Can he be effective with his dynamic styles? And that's what we'll see against Jan.
Hi, Aaron. I believe that's how you said it. It says hi.
Heading.
Heading? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
gosh, see, this is what I need you for. I always miss stuff like this. K1, great kickboxing promotion back in the day. Do you see this as the real title fight? So I do, but it's not for the reason you guys probably think, because I know there's people in the chat just waiting to say Aljo should be stripped, screw this guy, whatever. Like, I get all that. Okay. I get people being upset. The reason I think this is the real title fight is because, like I said earlier, I think the title should have been vacant. I don't think Aljo should have got this. Could have avoided all these problems, by the way. If the UFC just would have stepped in and said, look, this was a mistake by Jan. Aljo didn't win the fight. Petr Yan lost the fight. Make the title vacant, like with Deiveson Figueiredo and Benavidez when Figueiredo missed weight and beat Benavidez. I don't see how it's any different in that regard. It was a fighter making a mistake. In the case of Figueiredo, was missing weight. It should have been vacant. So if the title was therefore vacant, this would have probably been for the vacant title. So I do see it as the real champion, in my opinion. That's what I think. Do you agree or disagree?
It's 50-50, like you said. It's 50-50 for me. I think interim titles are always 50-50. You're like half the champion, and the real champion's walking around somewhere holding the belt. I don't know. This is a title fight. This is an interim title fight. This is not a real title fight.
Right.
I don't know. What's a real title fight? Like,
Well,
is
I think they
interim's
mean,
not
do you
real?
consider, no, but do you consider this the real belt because of what happened with Sterling and all that?
It's
That's
definitely a real belt, you know what I mean? But it's not the undisputed belt. Let's just say that.
for sure. But, and that's also something that kind of drives me nuts with fans. It's like, I know in this case, they want to be like, oh, real belt. But like, what about like, you know, Tony Ferguson being the interim champion when he beat Kevin Lee? What about Dustin Poirier being the interim champion? Like, these are things that fans like seem to just forget or don't care about. So that's where it's like, okay, well, why are you picking it here and not picking it there? That's, to me, I always recognize if you fought for an interim title, if it was supposed to be a 5-round fight and you were fighting the best in the division that time it could be a variety of reasons. I think in the case of Ferguson and Lee, it was that Khabib was injured or out or something. So to me, Ferguson was an interim champ. You need to recognize him as that. You can't say that Ferguson sucks, whatever. He did enough to get, it wasn't his fault that his opponent couldn't, you know, take the fight. So I'm all about the interim thing. I think, I mean, for example, Cyril Gane and Lewis, that's one's a little bit different because it was an issue with the champ having an issue with the promotion and doing their next fight. So that's one you might get it on. But as far as I'm concerned, in a lot of cases with interim titles, they're justified. So that's what we're going to say about that. Euro says, congrats on the new sponsorship deal. Hard work pays off. Yes, with All Stars, that's great. J-Spec Driver, speaking of close and disputed decisions, what's your thoughts on Lima MVP split decision? I thought Lima won. It was in Page's backyard. It was close. I don't think it was a robbery, if that makes sense. I thought Lima won, even though I don't think it was a robbery, if that makes sense. To me, a robbery, and I want people to just remember this is my view on a robbery. To me, a robbery is where the person didn't even come close to winning that fight. Ross Pearson, Diego Sanchez. Go back and watch that fight. That was a robbery. Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway 2 was not a robbery. I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for saying that, but that's the truth. Volkanovski definitely won some rounds. There's definitely some fights or some rounds that were close. That was not a robbery. That's my thoughts on this. That was also not a robbery. Going to keep it short and sweet. What do you think? Did you think MVP won? Or?
The robbery word is just too loose. You know, it's like the word scared.
My favorite fighter didn't win, and that's why it's a robbery. Yeah, that's the truth.
And with Lima MVP, it's just so close. You know what I mean? But you got to go back and look at how Lima won that fight. I feel like he won that fight because he got those knockdowns. But really, when you put those knockdowns in slow motion and watch what happens, it almost seems like Lima was off balance and just kind of got pushed, not really like hit clean and got knocked down. So, but the judges can't see that, you know what I mean? They're just seeing it in real time. It happens so fast. And I think being in your backyard plays a big factor in it. And MVP got the decision and it leads to the trilogy. I think they should go to Atlanta and do the trilogy where Douglas Lima is from. Why not?
There you go. Or Brazil. Bellator's never gone to Brazil, huh? You notice that? I know we're in a pandemic,
weird,
but
huh?
still. Yeah, but they've gone to Hawaii before the UFC, and they were in London last week. They tried to get Darren Till to fight that couldn't happen. So I don't know what
Bellator's going to Russia, and UFC hasn't.
That's true too. Yet. Yeah, I don't know.
Like, I wonder what's the deal. Do they have? I think it's the Fedor connection, maybe.
That, and also I think Bellator has like some type of partnership with Bama. I think that helped too. Like they have, because you see a lot of the fighters from Bama or some of those other promotions that are on Bellator cards. So it's I have to dig a little bit deeper. I need to get Scott Coker in a room and some whiskey and get the truth out and see what's actually going on there. West Coast giving me a hard time as usually does. He says Max finished Jan twice. You meant Aldo. Max finished Aldo twice. He says Jan, but he means Aldo. Yeah, I never said that that Aldo had not been finished. I know that Max finished him. I was actually at that one of the fights where he got finished in Detroit. I'm just saying in general, Aldo's a tough guy to finish in general. Like if you look at his career, I think Max and Connor are the only people, and Jan are the only people to finish Aldo. What I'm getting at is he's pretty durable. It's kind of what I'm getting at. J-Spec Driver, good to hear from you, buddy. What do you think about the Holland Dawkins no contest? Mostly the fact that 2 high-ranking UFC personnel were involved with the Nevada State Athletic discussion. I do not have an issue with the way things were ruled. I thought it was weird the way things kind of unfolded with them bringing like a football team to like discuss it. By the looks of it, and sort of the optics of it looked a little bit odd. I did speak to Kyle Dawkins, which I didn't think anyone else was going to get his side of things. Everyone was rushing to hear what Kevin Holland had to say, but no one really talked to Dawkins. I did, because that's what good journalism is. Yeah, I mean, Dawkins is fine with doing the rematch. They're going to rebook the rematch. My thoughts are that the referee missed something.
It's rebooked November 13th.
Yeah, it's rebooked. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. My thoughts are it was the right call because the referee missed something. There was something that illegally took place in terms of the headbutt that's not supposed to happen. So it should not be awarded a win for Dawkins. But yeah, it's just funny because I think if the shoe was on the other foot, they might have given that a win. We'll see. But we can play the what if game all day.
I talked to his brother, who was in the corner yesterday. Actually, the interview will be out in the next couple of days. And Chris, he also signed his contract to fight Derek Lewis, so it's 100% a go. Yeah, he was saying that they should just left it the way it was, man. Like, why would you go back and rewind it? Like, there's no reason to do it. If the head, there's another thing. Clash of heads and a headbutt. These are totally different things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
A
yeah.
headbutt is like,
Yeah,
if I
sorry,
go up
I
to you,
misspoke there.
James.
It was a
No,
clash of
but
heads. Yeah.
I think a lot of people kind of like mix it together to where it's like there's no differentiation between the two. And I've said it too before in the past. It's not like I haven't, but now I start to realize clash of heads and headbutt is totally different things. Headbutt is like I intentionally come at you and I smash my head into your nose, James, and that's not a fun day at all, right? And
No.
the clash of heads is you just run into each other with your heads, and for some reason, I don't know, luckily Kyle hit his head on Holland's jaw, not vice versa. Because if it was vice versa, then I think we're talking about. But what if Kevin Holland survived that and then completed that submission and won the fight? What do you think would have happened then?
They would have
Do
given
you think
Holland
they
the
would have?
win. 100%. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's always like there's a Kyle Dawkins was not the reason that was the co-main event last week, and it was Kevin Holland. And I get that. And look, I'm this is nothing against Holland, by the way. Holland's doing everything he's supposed to do. He's good at trash talking. He's good at building up fights. It's nothing against Kevin. It's against the bias that we see time and time again with certain fighters, where it's like people forget there's another opponent. You want to see the bias? Go look under the comments of my Dawkins interview I posted on Twitter yesterday. Some of the people, and even Kyle talked about in the interview, people harassing him. It's a no contest. That's the right call. How are you mad at him? If he got the win, I could understand people being like, "Oh, you cheated," whatever, even though it was an accident. But man, fans are so like I said it on I said it online there. Or I said it on a tweet. I don't usually respond to people, but there's unfortunately some terminally online MMA fans who get very tribal with fighters, and they just like to make stuff up. And this guy was saying that Dawkins was scared of having the rematch. It's like, what? Anyways, not even gonna entertain that stuff, but it's just like that's the type of world people live in, where they get like so.
The two high-ranking UFC personnel involved in the decision or the discussion?
Well, I think Shelby was Shelby. I can't remember who was around the TV. I'd have to go back and look.
They were looking at it, but
yeah,
that doesn't mean that they're in the discussion. They were watching it. They were seeing what was going on.
Yeah, I think you could be right.
You get like you see a picture of people, and when that picture came out, I thought it was funny that there was 10 people looking at the screen, but I'm not gonna make accusations that the officials, the UFC officials are there making a decision with it. But if we dig deeper, there's a lot of connections and little,
yeah, of course,
on,
yeah.
But we don't want to.
Let's get to the next question. Dern and Rodriguez, respectfully, softest headliners all year, star power wise. I mean, I don't think it's that bad of a main event. We've had worse main events. I want to remind people that we once had a main event featuring James Tahuna and Nate Marquardt. Look, Dern's someone that people know about for a while. Came from the jiu-jitsu world, has actually transitioned quite well to MMA outside the one loss to Amanda Ribas. And is really sort of coming into her own. And Marina Rodriguez came out of nowhere. Like, she was a Contender Series fighter, and I think people forget she's 34. Like, she's not young, but she's really made a nice push here. And she's another, like, the winner of this could potentially fight for the title next if they're trying to push out Carla Esparza, which it looks like they're doing. So no, I don't think it's that bad of a headliner. Say what you want about the whole card, but I mean, they're still doing Miesha Tate and Caitlin Vieira, aren't they? They rebooked it, right? So that's right up there too. I know Tate's a former champion, but to me, they're sort of on par. But look, it's a free fight night. Like, who cares? Like, I don't. I think it's an interesting fight. That's a fight that honestly could have been on a pay-per-view. I think, like, on a pay-per-view main card, it's an interesting fight. It's 50-50 fight, and it's two fighters that they're obviously trying to push towards that title shot. So I don't have an issue with that. I'm not singling you out, J Spec, but I see a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I'm going to skip the card." Like, okay, well, that's fine, but it's still like, it's an important fight for the division. So
J Spec, softest headliner, like, I could see what you're saying, you know what I mean? But both these women, this is their first headlining fight, and they're getting this opportunity to be on the poster, to be on the billboard and all of that stuff. And I feel like that we should celebrate that for them, because they've won so many fights in a row, and they're pretty exciting in their own right? You got Dern on one side, who's a submission expert that, is developing her striking. And then you got Rodriguez, who just got power that you don't even know where it comes from. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of game plans that they implement against each other. And Dern, do you think Dern would have been more popular if she wasn't married and had a baby right now? Do you think that's something that, am I saying like, 'cause remember she lost like 50,000 followers when she announced that she was pregnant.
So there's that. I mean, we're going into territory that I think is gonna. Yeah.
No,
So
because
no,
the headlining stuff. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think Dern would be more popular if people weren't obsessed with this accent thing. Like it's almost worked to get. There's a couple things that where Dern has sort of halted her star power. You're right. Taking the year off, getting pregnant. You know, there's always this with guys. It's, you know, guys are weird with women. Whatever. It's, you know, she's married. She has a kid. So it's kind of. There's that side of it. I don't need to go into detail. You know what I'm speaking about with that. The second thing is she missed weight a few times earlier in his career. So that sort of followed her for a bit. I think people don't care about that anymore. She hasn't missed weight in a while. Like you look at how people are coming after Aspen Ladd right now with this whole weight mishap and all that. And then the other thing is the accent thing, which it's funny because I put in keywords for my interviews. That's still like a top keyword is Mackenzie Dern's accent. I got news for everyone out there. I hate to break this to you, but when you spend time speaking one language all the time, which she does, she speaks Portuguese, her husband's Portuguese, and her father speaks Portuguese. And other than I think being at the gym, she's taught, and she even speaks Portuguese with her daughter. You're going to have an accent. I have a girl I grew up with here in Canada who's married an Aussie. She doesn't have a Canadian accent. She speaks like an Aussie now. Like it's just when you're around that environment for so long, you tend to just sort of lose your thing. So that's what it is for Dern. A lot of people are like, fix it. People think she's faking it. That's another put the Dern accent thing up with the Aljo strip thing, and we're sort of even. There's things that drive me nuts, but that's an entire podcast on its own.
Have you ever seen those videos where
the evolution? No, it's true, but it's because of who she's been around. Because I think back when she was starting out, she was in Arizona. She was around a lot of, you know, obviously American speaking people, but over time it kind of just, you know, whatever. She's not speaking it as often, so you're used to doing it. It's the same way that a fighter can get better at English when they're not speaking their native tongue around English people. It's no different. So
I wasn't talking about those videos, but yeah, those videos are around. But I feel like that is in the past, though. The accent thing.
No, it's not, dude. I still see people. I even posted my interview recently with her, and someone read under, "Oh, she's using that fake act. I hope the girl with the fake accent gets knocked out." There's still weird people like that. I don't know. It's just like, we're not going to spend the whole show dissecting this, but it's super
you know, like it kind of connects to the star power thing. You know what I mean? Headlining fights and stuff like that. How popular are you? And it's no secret women fighters are more popular than men fighters without actually becoming a champion, or, you know, there's different avenues of being popular. And I'm just saying, like, that could affect this headlining thing, you know, her being married, having a kid, and not being as popular. But I think that she's on her way to the title, just like Rodriguez. So these are two of the best girls in the strawweight division. We need to watch them fight this weekend. Yeah, and if you want to skip it, skip it. No one's making you watch fights.
Yeah, it always annoys me. It's like, I'm not watching the card. So you're making it about you, and I'm not, like, I know there's cards. Yeah. Listen, there's cards. There's fights I miss all the time. I PVR them. I catch up, but I'm not telling everyone that, because it's like, it's not going to help anyone by you saying that. It just makes you look like a tool, honestly. So, anyways, we spent way too much time on this. J-Spec driver, Phil Hawes or Deron Winn, who do you got? Did a whole breakdown of this on my show Monday on my podcast, youtube.com/LynchOnSports with timestamps, so you can see who I picked. But Phil Hawes all day. This is Phil Hawes' fight to lose. He knew about this fight well in advance. It's supposed to be in July. It got moved. Phil Hawes is on another level, being at Sanford MMA. Deron Winn, you know, to me, he's a wrestler. And as long as he might be able to out wrestle Phil Hawes, but I think Hawes is probably in there with some really great wrestlers at Sanford. I think he stuffs those takedowns that keeps it standing. And I've always said this, Deron Winn, for his build, is going to have a hard time at middleweight. He's not like Cormier, where he can actually pack some power and get in on the inside like Cormier has been able to do. He's going to struggle with bigger guys. And Phil Hawes is not a big middleweight either, but he's still bigger than Deron Winn, so that will help. So yeah, Phil Hawes all day in that fight.
Yeah, I think I'm taking Phil Hawes, but I don't know. When you watch those guys fight, they're basically very good wrestlers that have developed some decent striking. And Phil Hawes is, I think, do you think he's a much better striker than Deron Winn from your perspective?
Yeah, I think he is by far.
I think he's just, and I think that will be the difference maker. The wrestling will balance itself out. They'll play a lot in the clinch, but I think the striking advancements of Phil Hawes will win him this fight. I think he gets a knockout. I think Deron Winn is going to want to play on the feet with Phil Hawes, just because there was some tension. There was a little bit of back and forth between them, so they want to chuck him. And I think Phil Hawes lands first and lands impactful.
Let's go to Euro says he's taking you on by KO TKO. That's so he's on the same page as us. West Coast says, I don't like Sandhagen, but I think he runs over Jan. Runs over. Oh. Very strong word there. How does he run him over? How do you envision the fight playing out? We want to hear from the people who are picking Sandhagen, but we want to know how. It's one thing to just say I'm picking him. Well, let's hear how. How do you think it gets done? Kevin Nicholson, my good Patreon, good buddy, great follow for injury information. He's a PT, like it says there. Sterling's surgery disc replacement is cutting edge for fighters. There's no standard yet for expected return to fighting timelines. People need to understand this. It's not like not like a return after ACL surgery. Well, Kevin, you're putting the faith in MMA fans who a lot of them don't read this stuff. They just sort of see, oh, fighter out, they're scared, all this stuff, right? I mean, it's the same people who say this. It's the same people who are confident in saying a fighter's scared of taking a fight as opposed to maybe they're just injured. So there we go. Kevin also notes, Sandhagen showed outstanding cardiovascular endurance versus TJ. Likewise, I think it will be dangerous in the later rounds and will catch you on with a sub. By the way, I'm awful at fight predictions. But you make a good point. Sandhagen training in Colorado at Elevation Fight Team. The guy hikes all the time. He just actually, one of the cool things about the end of our interview today, telling me how much he likes doing risky hikes. Like he'll climb mountains and stuff that like he's not supposed to be doing because he likes overcoming his fears. Like I said, do you have a height fear? Like you have a fear of heights? Like you go on roller coasters. He's like, no, I don't have an issue with that. I like doing, he literally went into detail and explained this. I'll just mention this quickly. He's like, if I fall out of a roller coaster, there's paramedics there in 2 seconds. If I fall off a mountain, I'm probably gonna have to wait a couple hours. That to me is more risky and therefore more fun. So we're hoping Corey stays safe. He's not doing any of that leading into this fight, but still, I found that very interesting. It just shows you fighters to fight for a living, you have to be a little crazy, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've talked to Sandhagen about hiking and him hiking and getting lost in the mountains, which is probably one of the scariest things that could happen because you can't call anybody and you got to figure yourself back out of that puzzle, the wilderness. And but that's risky, man, taking those climbs. He's doing that free climbing stuff. I hope he's not.
What are your thoughts on Julian Marquez, future champ? Maybe he's one of my favorites right now. A little too early to say future champ. I think Julian Marquez is one of the most interesting guys on the roster. He's really nailed down like the, brand stuff outside of his career, like the whole Miley Cyrus thing. And by the way, everyone gave him crap for that. I think I've talked about this before. Julian did the right thing. You got to play hard to get with any woman. And that's how you get them interested. You don't just grovel like everyone on social media does when, someone posts a risque photo or whatever. That's a podcast for another day I'll get into. But no, Julian's great. I actually, I consider him almost a friend. And I do talk to him here and there. And I've met him a number of times. I beat him at Tecmo Bowl on the Nintendo a couple of years ago when we were in Vegas. Still holds it against me. But I wouldn't say he's a future champ. I think he's making the right moves. I think him moving from Vegas back to Glory MMA, working under James Krause, has really paid dividends. And he's got an interesting fight here with Jordan Wright, because Jordan Wright's like such a weird fighter to me, because like he'll either knock you out like he did against Jamie Pickett, or he gets knocked out in brutal fashion like Buckley and Hernandez and all these other fighters have done. So it's really interesting. It's going to stay standing. But I think with his age and stuff, probably not a future champ, but certainly someone you want to watch and you want to pay attention to. So that's my thoughts on Julian Marquez.
Yeah, in that division too that he fights in, it's just too early to know what his future holds for him. But he has shown promise, man, in his couple of fights that he's had in the UFC. But it's just, people could dump on him if you want to, just because he hasn't advanced as quick as you think he should have. But really, sometimes it just takes time, man. You guys can never give up on certain fighters, because you never know what's going to happen within a year or two of them just hitting a win streak and then becoming one of the top fighters in their division.
Let's get to some more questions here. West Coast says Jan will be exposed. You're the best. West Coast and we sort of go back and forth, but it's good banter. Like, he's not a jerk. He's not, he's not a troll. He has some strong opinions, but I like that. But I'm still waiting to hear how you see Corey Sandhagen winning. That's the only thing I asked from you this evening, if you can tell us that as well. Let's go all the way down to Euro. Thoughts on Johnny Walker's performance? I thought he could have easily beat Santos. It's almost like him being smarter made him more gun shy. His style isn't made to be smart. I actually agree with this. I think, I don't know what happened to Johnny Walker, but like the wild, crazy Johnny Walker that we've seen has sort of disappeared, at least in certain fights, like the Krylov fight. Maybe it's because Krylov just took him down and he couldn't do anything. But even this fight, I thought there was an opportunity here for Walker to be a little bit more wild. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much, but I do wonder, him being with John Kavanagh, if that's kind of limited some of the, things that he's been able to do, and he's trying to be a little bit more tactical. But I think whatever he was doing before was working, and what he's doing now isn't. So I don't know. I think his stock definitely went down after losing that fight. But I don't really know what you're getting with Johnny Walker at this point.
Yeah, it was his fight to lose, because Santos was on his last fight of his contract. He was on a losing streak, and it almost the UFC set Johnny Walker up with this main event to go in there and make a highlight reel knockout or a highlight reel finish or something. And he just laid a goose egg. And it all started, I think, when he went to SBG Ireland. I think that's where his decline has kind of, gotten really, really, really low. But, he listened to his coach. You know what I mean? Like between corners, Kavanaugh was telling him what to do, and he was listening to him, and that's what lost him the fight, basically. I think that's what lost him the fight is him being a good student of his coach. And now what does he do, man? He says I saw some post after the fight. He says he learned a lot from that fight, but really he should be talking about fighting somebody up in the rankings right now. But instead he's coming off a loss, and I feel like he's injured too now. I don't know.
Yeah, seems like it. But yeah, it's crazy. Just remember this. They were saying this is the guy who's going to beat John Jones, and he fights Corey Anderson, and it's crazy just how things can change after a couple of fights. Euro, where do you think Chris Weidman ranks among the best ever in that division, or has his losses hindered that? Weidman will always be one of the all-time greats for the simple fact that he was the first one to defeat Anderson Silva, not once but twice. And yes, he beat him twice because I know Silva got injured, but whose leg do you think he kicked? It was Weidman's shin. So Weidman will always go down. Weidman's going to go down as like to use like an NFL analogy. He'll go down as like a Terrell Davis. John, you're my age, or close to my age. Terrell Davis, one of the best Broncos NFL players, but it was hindered by injuries, and Weidman sort of the same thing. Like, I don't think you can judge the Weidman we have now because there's just been so many injuries since then. What you can never take away the Silva win. You can never take away the fact he was middleweight champion. So he will definitely go down. I mean, I'm sure as the years go on, we'll get more dominant champions or fighters that have defended their belt a long time. Izzy certainly looks that way, the way he's been running through his opponents. But Weidman has to go down as one of the all-time greats. But the history is not that old anyways. Like, who's the first middleweight champion? Was it Dave Castillo? I was trying to remember. I forget, it was Dave Manet or Dave Castillo. I can't remember which one. I'd have to go look at my history books. But and then like Rich Franklin was there for a little while until he ran into Anderson Silva. Then it was Silva, then Weidman, then Rockhold, then Bisping, then GSP, then Whitaker. Like, it's been crazy everything that's happened since then. So, but it hasn't been that long. Like, if you look at other divisions, like heavyweight or something, or heavyweight, I mean, there's been a handful of different champions. So yeah, Weidman's got to be up there for sure.
Yeah, he's an all-time great in the middleweight division. If you're a champ and you defended the title, and the big exclamation point is beating Anderson Silva at the top of his reign. Yeah, you're all-time great. One question before we go into the underdog picks.
Yeah.
Would you consider Khabib the Barry Sanders of MMA?
Because the thing is, like, Khabib still had a long career. Like,
Barry Sanders did too. You remember Barry Sanders retired really young. Like, I think he was like 30 years old or something like that. Like, he was at the top of his game.
I remember when Barry Sanders retired. That's a great reference here. So he made his UFC debut in 2012, January 2012. He retired 2020. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because a lot of people say, like, if Barry Sanders continued his career,
he would have been amazing.
All the records, and he could have just done so many great things, but he just stopped where he had all his bearings and everything, and accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. So, just because we're talking about NFL, I'm just saying Barry Sanders.
Cole Conrad's another one, right? Do you even know who?
Yeah, the heavyweight.
Who fought in Bellator. Right? And he was great. There's been a few like that where you're kind of like, wonder what if. But anyways, we're not here for that. Let's get into our underdog pick. I actually like a couple underdogs on this card, so I'll mention all of them just to give you guys some insight as to where I'm going. Again, we mentioned it earlier on the show. Sam Hughes is out of her fight with Lupi Godinez. Okay, so we're going to start first. Actually, we'll start there. Flyweight fight. Tim Elliott, Matthias Nicolau. I like Tim Elliott here, John. I think, and you like him as well, so maybe I'm spoiling your underdog pick here, but way more experience. The thing that really stood out to me when I spoke to Tim, and this kind of swayed my pick a little bit, is that Tim's like, look, I had other fight offers earlier this year. They were short notice. He's like, I don't need to take these fights. James Krause, he's been helping him out. I guess outside the cage, he's been doing some real estate stuff. He used to fight for the money. He has a daughter. He has all these things. Now he's doing quite well financially. So he's kind of picking and choosing his fights here. And I just think, he's had more than enough time to prepare for this fight. I think he's become a new fighter under James Krause since coming back. It's kind of like Julian Marquez from Vegas, really working on things, and just the experience gap here. I mean, Tim Elliott's got my math's not very good here, but 20, he's got like more than 30 fights, and Nicolau's got way less than that, 19 fights. So I think Elliott's a guy that, a lot of his fights have been lost, I think, mentally. You see when he lost to Ben Nguyen, when he lost to Royval, those were fights where I think he could have won, and he didn't because of a variety of different reasons. I think now he's in a good place. He's about to get married soon to Gina Mazzani. I think Tim goes out there and looks great and does quite well. And I think just his style is going to be too difficult for Matthias Nicolau. Not to mention the fact that Nicolau has been very inactive I think he had just the one fight this year, and then outside of that, he's been off for a bit. So I'm taking Tim Elliott with the upset there. And then I'll give you my other pick, and then we'll kind of move on here. I like Maria Agapova over Sabina Mazo, and for a couple of reasons here. Agapova, remember she was like minus 1,200 against Shauna Dobson. I think people forget she actually won that first round against Dobson, but just sort of ran out of gas, and then Dobson took advantage. And I mean, Dobson was at Elevation Fight Team at the time, so good cardio there. But I really feel like she's kind of being overlooked here, and this fight's dead even in terms of I think Mazo's fought better competition, and Mazo's a little bit bigger here, but they're the same age. Agapova's shown some brilliance as well. And you look at where other loss was at Tracy Cortez, who's been pretty good as of late as well. I think with Mazo, like she has a tough cut to 125. That last fight against Alexis Davis was at 135. It's going to be a tough cut for her. I think Agapova's had plenty of time off. I think she comes out here and really surprises some people. So Agapova was another pick I was looking at as far as the underdogs. And I think that was it. Yeah, I wasn't going to go too crazy, but yeah, those are two that I thought could potentially make some noise here. So your thoughts on my picks, and who are you picking for your underdog pick?
Okay, so Mazo, I like that. I actually like that pick because I'm picking. No, you're picking Agapova. The reason why I wouldn't pick Agapova is I think we don't know where she is mentally.
Yeah, I know she's had some drug problems. We've heard about that. Yeah,
some kind of weird drug problem. And then remember her last fight, she didn't react too well from that loss either. You know what I mean? So, and then she had to leave her gym. There's a lot of stuff going on outside the cage for her. So maybe she's jumping in too quick. I don't know. Maybe not. But Mazo, yeah. Do you think she misses weight?
No, I don't think she misses weight. She never has, but I'm just saying it's a tough cut for her. I interviewed her in person at whatever fight she had. I can't remember which one. This was back when she fought in California in Anaheim. And I could not believe how tall she was. Like she's almost as tall as I am. And she fights at 125. It's crazy. Like she's got a really big frame for the division. I think eventually she's going to have to move up. But the thing with Mazo is like, I followed her career in LFA. She was knocking girls out. And then she gets to the UFC. I remember she had that really disappointing debut against Marina Moroz. And then after that, it's been like, yeah, she's won her fights, but not like super, super impressive. Mm-hmm. Like, I think maybe there's that one fight she had. It's escaping me right now. She had like a good performance there, but a lot of like JJ Aldrich was a close fight. Justine Kitch was close. She got the win, and then she loses to Davis. It's like, I don't think Mazo's as advertised, and she trains at a great camp at King's MMA, but I just think Agapova, like she showed me a little bit more from what I've seen. And one other thing I'll mention for that last fight, remember Brett interviewed her for ESPN. They were talking about her being the next big thing. I think that might've got to her head a little bit too. You're a minus 1,200 favorite. You're supposed to win. It's a lot of pressure for a 20 something year old. So, Mazo hasn't had that type of expectation, but I think Agapova comes back with everything she's been through. I think she's got a lot to fight for in this one. So,
yeah. So I agree with you on the Tim Elliott pick. I think Tim Elliott's going to go in there and do his thing. The other one underdog pick that I'm going to go with is Charles Rosa over Damon Jackson. The reason why I'm doing that, even though if you look at Charles Rosa's record since he started in the UFC, he has traded wins and losses continuously. Like he's due for a loss because he's coming off a win. But I think he breaks that trend in this fight against Damon Jackson. I think they go to the ground, and I feel like Charles Rosa is well versed enough to go to the ground, survive against Damon Jackson, because we know what Damon Jackson can do on the ground. I think they stay on the feet. I feel Charles Rosa's striking is a little bit better, and he cruises out another unanimous decision in this fight and gets back-to-back wins for the first time in his UFC career, which will be big for him. But Damon Jackson, he's since his last fight, right, where I believe he was knocked out.
Topuria finished him, yeah.
Yeah, and then he had a bunch of canceled fights. So I don't know where he's at right now with what he's doing ahead of fights or his training camp. And he doesn't really speak to anybody anymore because you've interviewed him before. Did you interview him ahead of this fight?
I did, yeah.
Okay, well, what was he doing? Like, does he seem regular? Does he seem like everything's going?
Yeah, he's good, and again, he's a Fortis MMA guy, so there, he's getting good training in there. It seemed like he was in good spirits. This was a fight he really wanted. He felt, I think I have to go back and watch it, but I think he mentioned something about having an injury in that last fight against Topuria. Like he just was really sour about that fight. He's like, man, I know I can beat that guy. I didn't show up. Jackson's dangerous. Listen, this is another fight I was looking at where it's 50-50 because Rosa, yeah, he's never won 2 straight fights in the UFC. When you think how long he's been in the UFC and hasn't won 2 in a row, he's like the Randa Marcos of men's featherweight. But yeah, 50-50 fight. I honestly, I was like, I'm going to stay away from this one because both are, I don't know. I don't really know how good they are or how bad they are, so to speak. Because remember, Rosa's not that far removed from getting absolutely demolished by Bryce Mitchell. Damon Jackson's been finished before. it's a bit of a wild card. But yeah, I could see your logic here where you've got a guy in like 50-50 fight, and I think either guy could win, so I don't hate that Rosa thing. I was hoping you'd pick someone else I could really give you a hard time, but I can't. So that's where we're at.
Okay, no Marina Rodriguez pick? What's going on?
Rodriguez could win as well. Yeah, if it stays standing and Dern, and plus Rodriguez has that 5-round experience. Dern really doesn't. I think that's another one to keep an eye on. I think Dern's just because their striking's kind of come along. Dern has the ground threat. That's what gave me the difference here because we haven't really seen Rodriguez on the ground, and Dern is, I think, the best submission specialist.
We've seen Rodriguez on the ground. She gets taken down and she can't really get back up. We
but sorry, I meant submission. Sorry, should have clarified. I meant like submission defense, like her getting. We haven't really seen him like her in any trouble with any ground people.
Not a good thing then.
That's what I'm saying. So that's right. I know. So that's why I'm picking Dern is because I think Dern is the best jiu-jitsu in that division. But saying that, Marina also knocked out Amanda Ribas. We watched that fight together. I mean, Amanda's not an easy girl to finish, and she did beat Dern, but again, circumstances different. Dern coming off the pregnancy. But yeah, it's a tough fight, but I give that edge to Dern just because of the ground game. Because she can, if Dern wants to, I hope Dern doesn't turn into Ronda Rousey. And what I mean by that is when Ronda Rousey knocked out Bethe Gea, she fell in love with her stand-up and abandoned her judo and her ground game, and it was her kryptonite. I hope Dern doesn't do the same thing here where she's got some good stand-up now. She's with Jason Perillo. Don't strike with the striker. Take this to the ground, win the fight. You don't need to prove anything. You got to earn yourself if you want to get a title shot, you got to win. You don't have to look too flashy. So that's all I'm saying. But anyways, we're running out of time here. Let's get 2 more questions here. Some people, I know Dylan was asking about Contender Series. We're doing the show while Contender Series is on. I've got a PVR. I'm going to watch it later. West Coast finally admits Sandhagen by TKO or submission in 3 or 4. That's what I was looking for. Thank you there. Lucas will answer his question. Any word on Sasha Palnikov? He hasn't tweeted anything since like August. I checked that out the other day. He's not much on social media.
No, he's chilling. He's training.
Yeah,
I know he's got a fight booked, but I actually was messaging with him last week or something, and he's just training and focus on getting better. I don't think he's gonna. It's when you're coming off back-to-back losses, you don't want to rush into your next fight, right? You want to take some time and be very selective of your next matchup because you could be getting cut if you lose. So you got to be very strategic. So I think that's what he's doing. That's not what he said to me, but this is my speculation.
I'm telling you a future project idea I have. If you ever make your way over to Vegas, you, me, and Sasha got to play that Mortal Kombat arcade he has in his house. I don't know if he talked to you about this. And we got to get a game in. We got to film it. We got to see who the best is at Mortal Kombat. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, for sure. And his roommate, I know him too. So yeah, I think those guys play video games like they're single and they're single.
You know me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you can, you got time to do stuff like that. So it makes sense. Want to thank everyone so much for tuning into the show today. We really appreciate it. Again, if you missed it off the top, we got a partnership with All Star Sport. We're really excited with that going forward. JHK been doing a ton of content for them already, and congrats again to you. I don't think I've had a chance on air to say congrats on the gig with All Star because that's official now. So that's good as well. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. I got a bunch of interviews coming out. I got a couple more really cool interviews coming out later this week, but some of the ones I can tell you that I have had, Corey Sandhagen being the big one, had a few others that just escaped my mind. This is what happens when I do this live. But I got some other big names coming up here soon that you'll be wanting to check out. JHK, anything you want to say before we get out of here as we wrap things up?
Yeah, just make sure to subscribe to this page and follow me on social media, JHK MMA. And this week I have a few fighters from this weekend's card: Mackenzie Dern, Sam Hughes, which the fight got canceled, Randy Brown, Phil Haas, Jared Vandera, Charles Rosa, and next week, today I'll be putting out the interview with Norma Dumont. Thank you everybody for watching.
Hulk Hogan's giving us a hard time. He says reason Sandhagen beats Jan is because Sandhagen is a better kickboxer while Jan is a better boxer. Sandhagen has longer reach. See John Jones for reference. Jan is an average wrestler. Doesn't matter. We still think Jan's going to win. Don't say we didn't answer your question. That's what we're here to do. We're here for the people. If we did miss your question, though, post it in the comments. For myself, for JHK, for producer Michael, thank you so much for watching. Download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. We'll be back here a week today previewing another upcoming notable fight. Have a good evening and take care.